Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on things to consider when creating a 2021 people plan. First of all, some introductions. So myself, the Head of Client Services, are here to help answer any questions that you may have and to support Victoria on the webinar. But your main presenter today is Victoria Templeton, our HR Knowledge Manager, or one of our two HR Knowledge Managers. And we are, in the background, we have our team also helping with fielding any technical problems that you may have. Hopefully you won't have any, but if you do struggle with hearing or anything else, do send us a message and we can see if there's anything generically wrong or if we can point you in the right direction. We do encourage you to ask questions. We have had to put you all on mute because there's so many attendees today, but you should all have a question panel, something like this, and if you send your message in there to us, we will field them at the end of the webinar. If we don't have time to field questions at the end, depending on how long the presentation takes, then we will always come back to you afterwards. So we do encourage you to ask us questions. We will also try and make this interactive. We do have a few polls for you today. You'll see this on the screen when we're going to conduct some polls. Do make sure that your screen is not in full screen mode if you would like to participate in the poll. If for some reason you won't have the opportunity to vote properly in full screen mode. So I'm now going to hand over to Victoria. It's going to take us through the webinar. So thank you, Victoria.
Thank you, Sue. And I'll just bring up my slides for everybody.
Yeah, I'll just hand over.
Thank you. There we go, and you should all be able to see my screen now. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar this morning. Thank you for joining us. So before we begin, I'd just like to run through the agenda for today. And I'll begin by acknowledging the external context in which you're going to be operating within this year. I'll briefly introduce business and people planning that will be vital for 2021. And however, the main discussion today will be to consider initiatives that can be incorporated into your people plans, obviously depending on your business circumstances. And we're going to do this by exploring the employee life cycle. I'll then close the webinar by sharing an example of a people plan and look to answer any questions that have come in. So 2021 is pretty much where we left 2020, and there's going to be a lot going on in the initial part of the year, and so there's going to be a few things that we need to be mindful of. Obviously, we've got continued employee COVID absences, and whether that's absences because of sickness itself, or employees having to self-isolate because they've been in contact, or even quarantining on return from holiday, or even dealing with absences from employees who do not feel it's safe to attend work. They're going to be some of our challenges already going into this year. And we continue to have the furlough scheme, and we may need to continue furloughing employees through to the end of its scheme, which was extended to the 30th of April. We then need to continue maintaining safe working environments, and that does take investment in terms of cost, time, and for some businesses it may lead to having some kind of impact on how they run themselves. And then we have the risk of increased mental health absenteeism, and according to the charity Mind, more than half of adults and over 2/3 of young people said that their mental health had got worse during lockdown. And it also found that 1 in 3 adults didn't access support because they didn't think they deserved it. So there is going to be a challenging year, and we've also got the challenge of the development gaps that has come about as a result of the pandemic. And according to a recent survey that HR Solutions carried out with Deloitte Propel, then they found that 50% of respondents felt that employee development would be the biggest challenge to their business over the next 12 months. And of course, we've got Brexit, and with that, it means new working practices. And from a people perspective, in particular, it's around how recruitment has changed when it comes to recruiting from overseas, and also what we need to do if we already employ EU nationals in our organisations. So there is a lot to consider going into 2021. But before we move on to start looking at planning and the considerations, I just wanted to run a few polls just so it can help us with the webinars we move forward. So I'm just going to invite Sue to call up the polls that you'll soon see on your screen, and I'd just like you to take a few moments to answer the questions that we've got.
Okay, thank you, Victoria. So we have a first in a series of short answer polls at the moment. So this first question is, do you have a 2021 business plan in place? This is business plan. Just give chance for a few more to vote. Okay, I think most people have voted now, so I'm going to close that poll and share the results with you.
What do we have?
Yeah, 65% have.
Okay, right, okay.
Good result. So let's just move on to the next question. And that is, do you have a 2021 people plan in place? That's an interesting one.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, has everybody voted? Just about. Okay, I'll close that poll and I'll share the results.
Wow.
So we have a reverse.
Yeah.
Almost the same percentages, but in reverse.
And hopefully, so today's webinar will
Absolutely. Okay, so we have another poll. And this one is, if you do have both a business plan and a people plan, are they aligned?
Wow.
Okay, I'll close that poll and share the results. For quite a while there, it was actually 50-50. So interestingly, the yes is just pipped it at the end.
Yeah.
So yeah, we hide that one. I think we have another couple, don't we? So yeah, so now we move on to your leadership team. So in your business, is HR part of your leadership or executive team? Okay.
It's looking a good statistic.
It is a very healthy one. Let's just close that one and share those results.
That's very good.
So yeah, it's good to see. And a few challenges for a few businesses still.
Yeah. In
that one. So I think we move on to our last poll in this section.
Yeah.
So we've asked this on a few other webinars, but interesting to see how in January 2021, whether this changed. So what do you envisage being your biggest challenge this year? They might all be a challenge, but which one do you think will be your biggest? Nearly everybody voted now. Okay, I'll close that poll and share the results with you. Interesting to see furlough going a bit low down the list now, and COVID. So think people are getting to grips with managing that now.
And it's good to see Brexit quite low at the
At the moment, yes.
relatively low, yeah.
But then we've got the fallout of a year of COVID, haven't we? And ongoing as well.
And I'll come on to talk about especially all of these, especially employee development and employee mental health. So thank you, Sue. That's really interesting. Thank you, everybody. So we're going to just look at the business and people planning before our main focus of today's webinar. And I'm sure you'll all be familiar with the need for business planning. And we're looking at the fact that when you do a business plan, it's about carrying out a SWOT analysis, because that's really important for you to determine the future direction of your business. And that business plan that is generated should then address the weaknesses and opportunities and allow you to set your goals and objectives. Typically, it's necessary to plan short, medium and long term. And I guess at the moment, the priority is really the short term, because we simply have to respond to the pandemic, and it is changing daily. So really, the short term measures are probably going to be your key priority, but you shouldn't forget where you want to go medium, long term as well. Business planning should be the foundation ultimately for your people plan, because essentially how you achieve your business's success, it's going to be through your people. And that's why it's really important to have them aligned and working together. And in terms of the people plan, then as I've just said, it needs to be aligned to your business plan, because you can't achieve your operational success without your people. And your employee are your most important asset. So having a full understanding of your business goals and objectives for this coming year is going to be absolutely fundamental. And just as you would carry out a SWOT analysis when you're working through your business plans and your strategy for the next year, you should also take the same approach looking at your people in your human resources aspect of the business. And I would suggest that a good methodical approach for doing that is looking at the employee life cycle, to really examine the whole employment relationship. And on this slide here, it's just giving you just one example of a framework that you can use. And as you can see, it's going to be really important at the top here to map out what the business objective is that you're wanting to align to. And there it's about trying to understand from your SWOT analysis and looking at your people about what objective specifically you need to address that particular business objective. And so that will then help you identify all the actions that you need to implement that will address weaknesses or make the most of opportunities. But ultimately, your overall goal is to achieve business success as mapped out in the business goals, and that's going to be achieved through what you identify here in your people plan. So if we think back to those challenges that I spoke a few moments ago, so, you know, your absenteeism because of COVID, we're still going to see self-isolation, people not wanting to come to work because of, you know, a perceived safety issue, you know, the Brexit, recruiting from outside the UK, for example. That's got to be at the forefront of your mind, because they're the challenges that we've got that are external to our organisations that we're going to have to work through. So what we're going to do now is spend basically the rest of the webinar to actually look at the employee life cycle. And as I said, this is a good framework to use. And going through this, it'll help you to consider what you want to include in your people plan. So we're going to look at the organisational structure. We're going to look at recruitment and attraction, onboarding and employee development, employee pay and reward, employee relations, diversity and inclusion, and then finally leaving employment. And what you can see here on this slide here is considerations and questions that you should be asking, and it's going to be essential to ensure that you have the right structure in place to deliver on your objectives. We are seeing changing customer needs because of COVID, as well as the need to do business differently due to leaving the EU, and we're also seeing an even greater focus on technology. So having a deep understanding of what your organisation needs to do to be successful will help you to understand whether the structure remains fit for purpose. So when it then comes to your people planning, and with your 2021 business goals in mind, think about these kind of areas. So are there any roles in your current structure that are better suited, positioned elsewhere? Are any of the roles overstretched or underutilized? Do you have enough resource to be able to accomplish the goals and objectives set out? Or are you under-resourced, over-resourced? Do the existing reporting lines ensure efficient ways of working? Or are there roles that are better suited elsewhere under different reporting responsibilities? Also give consideration to your structure in terms of whether you have the right skills in the right jobs, and if you have sufficient flexibility within your workforce to be able to adapt quickly. And as we know, with the pandemic, we are having to adapt really quickly to what is going on. And are there any skill gaps in the existing structure? And if so, to what extent? And have you considered what roles you'll need in the future? So it's not about thinking now, but as I said earlier, it is short, medium and long-term planning. And so think about what roles you may need in the future and how succession planning may be necessary to help you with that. And consider whether there are actually any functions that could be brought in from outside, so you're utilising the expertise of a third party. So these are the key questions really that are going to help you work through to determine if you think you've got the right structure in place. And so on this slide here, what we're looking to do is just give some examples of what options you've got, considerations to put into your people plan. And obviously the first thing that comes to mind is about whether do you need to restructure the business to make sure it's aligned to your business needs and can deliver. And of course, with restructure, that may or may not include redundancies. So think about, first of all, is your structure set up correctly? Outsourcing could be an option to make cost efficiencies, and as I said, to buy in the expertise. And another activity could be actually, do you need to go through reviewing your job descriptions and competencies? You may have you may have job descriptions that were in place that were written at the time you recruited, which may be years back. Well, actually reviewing all of your job descriptions and competencies now will help you to understand if you've got the right roles and activities in place for moving forward. And then think about whether you can identify if there are any roles and that can work more flexibly and to what extent. We've all seen remote working over the last year. Can that be considered more on a permanent basis? And at the moment, the message is work from home if you can. So obviously for the foreseeable future, we are working remotely, but think about after that, whether that could be a benefit for your organisation. And for those of you that's joined our webinars in the past, we've often talked about, actually, could you look to move to a 4-day operating week? Now, for some businesses that, that are really struggling, then actually, could that be a way of gradually rebuilding the business? And so that typically, instead of, a 5-day week, it's going to potentially be that 4-day week. And so that just may help allow you to manage your costs with obviously your business needs and what's going on. But of course, there's the knock-on effect of moving to that is the practical side of how do you implement it and introduce it, because ultimately it's a fundamental change to people's contracts. But there may, in theory, be a strong business rationale for doing that, because if it helps you stay in business, it's better than going under. And identify clear development paths within your structure that can enable growth from within, as well as act as a tool for employment engagement. We know recruitment's costly, so how can you develop your existing workforce so that you could promote from within? And as I said, that is a really great employee engagement tool. So there's quite a lot of examples there of what you can consider when you're looking at your structure. And remember, think about what your own business needs and the challenges that you face as well for your business and the sector that you're in. And if we look at recruitment and attraction, if you have identified the need that you do need additional resource, then think about how you're going to address the opportunities and challenges. So, for example, utilising social media such as LinkedIn as a way of attraction can be a really efficient and cost-effective way of searching for your applicants. You know, it's relatively, you know, it's cost-effective, and because it's social media, it is pretty much quick, instant. So, as I say, because we're in a pandemic, we are having to do things much more quicker and slicker. And so if you can find a way of recruiting in a much more efficient way, you're hopefully going to get your new employees into the business quicker. You're likely to be searching a much wider talent pool due to the higher employment levels, and so you may also have to compete as well with for the best candidate with your competitor. So consider how you can do this and review and develop an employee value proposition, which is also EVP. For those of you that aren't fully aware of that, an EVP is a unique set of benefits that the employee receives in return for the skills, capabilities and experiences that they bring then to the organisation. And having the ability to accurately define your own organisation's EVP can actually enable you to effectively attract the best talent, but also help you keep that best talent. So your EVP is actually going to be really useful. Now could be the opportunity to recruit on flexible arrangements, enabling you to operate in a more agile way. So for instance, don't just consider you know, the hours of operation and how you want that role to work, but think about the best type of contract to bring a new starter in on. Using fixed term contracts, for instance, can help if you're unable to commit longer term to work. Annualized hours contracts can also help if you can predict quiet and busy periods over the coming year. And so it's an efficient way of using resources. You know, you can have your people in at work during the busy times, but when you're quiet and there's no work, then obviously you manage your resource in a way. There's obviously practical challenges with how you implement it, but nevertheless, if at this point in time it's what's needed, then it is an option. And consider if making use of government schemes, such as your Kickstart scheme, will help you. The government are funding the creation of these roles, so actually there's an opportunity out there to help with getting financial support for your recruitment. And also apprenticeships. You know, apprenticeships have been around for some time, but with the announcement late last summer, you know, the government have committed to giving further finances in regards to apprenticeships. So think about how you can utilise the support that is available to you. And as you know, it costs to recruit. And for those businesses who rely heavily on EU nationals, you know, such as your hospitality sector, the care sectors, then recruitment costs will probably increase now, because in order to recruit from outside of the UK, every employer has to be a sponsor in accordance with the Home Office. And so with that, there will be costs. So the fees associated to becoming a sponsor, the licenses, and all the visa costs. So now might be the time to review your overall recruitment strategy to understand how you could recruit differently as a way to keep your costs to a minimum. So there's a lot of consideration there from a recruitment and attraction perspective. And moving on to the onboarding process, so in keeping with, you know, your new starters, retaining your employees this year is going to be key. And we had research carried out back in 2017 by the CV Library. They reported that 22% of new recruits left a job during or at the end of their probation period. And it found that the main reason for leaving was because the role was not as expected. Now, of course, recruitment not only costs, but is time intensive. And to have a new starter leave so early not only is a waste of your time and investment in their training, but it's delaying your ability to progress the business goals, because you're going to need further time to now find a replacement. So onboarding is a really important part of the recruitment process. Employee retention leads to greater employee knowledge, skills and experience, and does provide stability to an organisation, which overall helps the business drive forward. Now, if you do anticipate needing to recruit this year, then to support a good onboarding process and retaining employees, then it's things like reviewing your job descriptions, as I said a moment ago, and your personal specifications. These are the basis for any interview and backs up what is communicated about the role and what is expected. Review what information you do communicate during your recruitment processes to ensure you are being realistic with the applicant about what is entailed in the job. Review your induction and probation processes, because you've got to make sure they are fit for purpose and that they help provide a clear path in the early days for somebody learning the ropes. And having clear job descriptions and a clear onboarding plan with a clear overview of what's expected is essential, not only for their level of engagement, but as well as keeping them challenged. And all of that combined will ultimately lead to job satisfaction. So onboarding is a really important part of the employee life cycle and sets the tone for the ongoing relationship. Now, employee development, so the poll that we ran earlier, so this came up quite high, 30%, I believe, of you believe that employee development's going to be a challenge. And there is a clear correlation between the performance of your employees and the performance of your business. And I mentioned earlier that there is an SME survey that we carried out late last year. And in that, 50% of respondents felt that employee development would present the biggest challenge this year. And it's been nearly 12 months that we've been in this pandemic. And we've seen a move to home working, the ending of traditional training methods. And so naturally, employees have suffered as a result in terms of their own personal and professional development. Training and investing in your workforce may feel like an unnecessary expense, you know, especially as we are in a recession and we're still not through the pandemic, but it's essential to boosting your productivity. It can act as a motivator and retain your employees, which, as I've said, is really important at this point in time. And all of these help to rebuild your business. Having clear development paths and succession planning in place can also help your workforce to grow and develop and drive that employee engagement. But for training to be effective and add value, it must align to the overall business plan. And so when reviewing your business plan, consider how training and development can help in driving that success and achieving the goals. So on this slide here, there are just some things for consideration that may be appropriate to your business. And some questions to consider. So, you know, think about whether there will be any new products or services that you're going to be launching this year. Think about if you're planning to enter new markets or seek new challenges, because these areas are you're going to need, you know, a workforce that understand where you're going and have the right capabilities and skills to help with delivering that. If there are plans to introduce new technology, equipment or working practices, then training must be at heart of that, because you need to have efficiently trained employees for you to enable to bring the new technology, equipment and working practices in place. There may be some legislation coming in this year that affects your industry or employment in general, so think about what you need to do to educate your line managers and key employees in your business. And think about whether the business needs to recruit more as part of its growth, and therefore consider your induction and your onboarding training and plans, and how you can integrate them, as I've said a moment ago, into the business, and making sure that they're educated and have got the right skills to help. And also, if your business is regulated and therefore you need to upskill to maintain compliance to any business standards, then this is going to be important, and you need to identify and map that out, because you need to ensure that compliance is met. We have moved to online meetings and training, so think about how you can make best use of e-learning, and think, will e-learning work on its own, or do you need to supplement it with other types of training? And of course, some training may only be suitable to the classroom setup. So if we think about the practical courses like health and safety, but it will mean finding a suitable training provider and course that can deliver that training in a COVID secure way. So just bear in mind how you're going to do your training and if it's going to be a blended approach. And existing classroom training, how can you move that to online and virtually? We have lots of platforms, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, GoToWebinars. You know, think about how you can use that software, that technology to deliver what you would normally deliver in a classroom, and how you can maintain engagement and that learning outcomes are achieved. You know, that's going to be a big thing, especially, you know, we see online working continuing throughout this year. And then, do some roles or job holders need mentoring as part of their learning and development? And so consider how this could be done virtually, but also, when ready, carried out in a secure way face to face. And we mustn't forget appraisals or performance reviews. Have a look through to see, you know, where there may be gaps and what you need to then use and achieve moving forward to help achieve your 2021 business plan. Now, you can read more about our SME Challenge report. There's a link that will be on your slides that will get distributed after this webinar, but we also are running a webinar this afternoon, and I know time is precious, but if you do have a spare hour later today, then it's not too late to sign up. So we do have a further webinar this afternoon, and then next month there's a further one on how to bridge the development gap, and I'll give you further details at the end of the webinar. So if we look at employee pay and reward, this is going to be an essential part of the employment relationship. And in your people planning, consider whether your pay and reward structure is appropriate and fit for purpose, but obviously bear in mind your financial constraints. Having the right reward package not only helps you to attract, but retain and motivate your employees. And retaining your employees is going to be key for rebuilding your business. You're going to need that stability, as well as having benefiting from having a workforce that holds a great amount of business knowledge and experience. So it's going to be important for you to be aware of what your competitors offer, and benchmarking is an excellent way of evaluating your reward package to see how you compare with other organisations. Remember, having the right pay and reward is key to the EVP, the employee value proposition, which is what makes you an employer of choice and stand out from the rest. But of course, reward isn't all about money. It can be about the non-financial benefits as well. And there was a survey carried out last year by Hooray Insurance, and their key findings found that the employee benefits, such as your income protection, health insurance, life insurance, and increased holiday, are actually likely to be more sought after now. And that, I guess, makes sense, because the psychological impact of COVID this last 12 months has been so significant. And I think it's given people the opportunity to think about what's important to them, and especially the need to safeguard their future and finances, not only for themselves, but the family. I think we're going to see more of an appetite from employees wanting to have these kind of benefits. So think about how you can review and update your benefit package. And of course, having a benefit offering that includes these benefits is ultimately going to lead to high impact on morale, and, as I say, retain your staff and act as a good selling point when it comes to recruitment. We're going to look at employee relations, and that's all about your relationships with your employee, sorry. And that can either be through individual workplace relationships, or if you're unionized, then through those collective workplace relationships. And how you communicate with your employees and how you involve them is going to be key for maintaining those good relationships. Poor relations often lead to conflict, which in turn can lead to grievances and even resignations in employment tribunals. So maintaining a healthy employment relations environment is key. COVID-19 has unfortunately increased the potential for workplace conflict. From the employer's perspective, you know, they're likely to be under extreme pressure to not only survive and keep the business going, but also having to meet the stringent health and safety requirements that we need to keep employees and everybody safe. So there's a lot of pressure at this point in time. And from the employees, there's also the challenge that they have from caring responsibilities, if they're carers for other adults or vulnerable children and children, then that's going to be a challenge. You've got increased work demands as well as the psychological impact the pandemic has actually had on mental health. And so it makes it even more important to consult and communicate with your employees regularly to ensure that people's views are taken on board and they feel listened to. And so here on this slide are some ways in which you can look to build your employee relations environment. And that includes offering multiple confidential reporting channels, facilitating a trustworthy open door approach, give your employees access to anonymous reporting, and consider whether introducing or reviewing your existing employee assistance program, which can help drive a better employee relations environment. And consider team dynamics, and where there are challenges, look at team building measures that may be able to improve and develop the team and alleviate any conflict. But communication is key, and having that open, transparent and regular communication is going to be important for how you move through this year. We also, as part of employee relations, need to look after our people. There's a lot of continued anxiety surrounding the pandemic, and so looking after your people this year is going to have to be key to your people plan. And also, according to Mind, they have reported that some of the feelings that people have reported to them during the pandemic, including feelings of isolation, not being supported, feeling scared, being tired and general feeling low and anxiety. So there really is a need to look after everybody. And for employers, it's important to recognise that these feelings are serious and real to the individual, and having a range of support measures will help them to regain an effective work-life balance and provide reassurances about coming back to work and being engaged. So in terms of your people plan, you could consider things like training your line managers on mental health and how to support their employees, introducing mental health first aiders in the workplace, reviewing your existing EAP, Employee Assistance Programme, just make sure it's fit for purpose, and also look at the usage levels. Have people forgotten that it's there? Because quite often you hear about they're underutilised, and do you need to do another campaign to re-communicate it? And look at the way in which your organisation communicates with its employees and adapt that as necessary, because what you want is ensuring that regular open communication is the heart of any communication strategy. And in terms of looking after people, you could look at your current offering in terms of your sick pay and your benefits associated with that. Obviously, we are in a recession and it's very difficult for many businesses, but it's just, something to think about, whether that's more of a long-term aspiration, but something that you may want to consider. And of course, we have new ways of working, which again all forms part and parcel of your employee relations environment. And whilst many people are still employed in traditional full-time jobs with one employer, explore how the business can utilise technology. And we've already seen that huge shift to virtual meetings, using technology for staying in contact. But the last year has actually shown that it can work. And I think before this pandemic, there was a lot, I think there was a big trust issue in that, are employees really working? And actually what this last year has shown is actually, yes, it does work. We can trust our employees. They do get on with their job. Okay, there may be the odd exception, but that's where, you'd manage individually. But ultimately, I think this last year has shown that it can work. And consider looking at a more uncommon form of working by creating a different form of workplace. So it's about becoming competitive and successful. So how can you do that through, your part-time hours, flexible working, job sharing, things that perhaps you may not have used before. Think about how you can use them now for more efficient ways of working and to allow you to remain flexible. You could also carry out a job analysis in which you gather information about the organisation job roles so that you can identify how you may need to refine those roles, making them more efficient, and how they can use technology further. Job analysis collects information about the duties, responsibilities and necessary skills, and so going through that process may help to see where you can bring in technology where you've not thought of before. And undertake a review of how the organisation can become more flexible through its people and in particular the contracts. So I know I acknowledged this earlier in the webinar, but it's about using your contracts of employment to get the best out of you know, being able to recruit and resource your business. And you know, whether that's fixed term contracts, using consultants, external consultants, or annualized hours, job share contracts. Think about all those different types of flexible working that may help benefit your business this year. And in terms of the upskilling, then it's about understanding whether how you can upskill and cross-train the workforce to make it more adaptable and flexible. And so this is really important when you're at a point where you need to adapt and respond to the pandemic and also customer needs. So it will not only make you quicker to adapt to current external challenges, but it can build better collaboration. It can improve efficiency and lead to improved employee motivation. So upskilling and cross-training are really useful activities to look at incorporating. And diversity and inclusion, we must always take time to consider how effective we are at being a diverse and inclusive employer. So examining your working practices to allow it to become more flexible also presents that opportunity to see how you can become more diverse and inclusive. Having a more diverse workforce not only enables you to have more diverse views and ideas amongst the workforce, but ultimately can lead to an increased creativity and therefore productivity. And we know from a 2018 report by the Equality Commission, it's called Is Britain Fairer? They found that 1 in 10 FTSE 100 executive directors were female, and that around 42% of women in employment are part-time. And that just illustrates that if you then adopt a more flexible working environment and you recruit more flexibly, you're going to tap into a wider selection pool and have more candidates available. And so it's bringing that diversity into your workplace. So in terms of diversity inclusion, then think about reviewing your recruitment practices. You know, ensure that that any bias or discrimination can be eliminated. So you could do things like blind screening of applicants. So when you're going through a campaign, the application is based purely on the skills and experience, and you know, all the personal details are removed. You could look at standardizing your recruitment processes so you're consistent with how you approach recruitment, and structure skilled-based interview questions so you've got that objective grounding for the questions you ask. And review your recruitment sources to ensure you advertise in a wide range of mediums to reach out to a diverse group of people as possible. And the really important thing is diversity training, definitely for those who are involved in recruitment, and if you can, then obviously always have diverse, equal opportunity training for your whole workforce. And as we come to the end of the employee life cycle, leaving employment, then really the main tool for this is your exit interview. Exit interviews are key tools for organisations because it helps you understand more about reasons why employees leave. It may be able to help you to reduce future attrition from all the results that you're seeing, and it can provide you insights into problems in the organisation which may not have been obvious otherwise. It can also be a source for additional training across the workplace, and also opportunity to research competitors, because when you're doing that exit interview, it's your opportunity to explore the new job that the person is going to, the organisation, the salary and benefits. So It could be a little bit of benchmarking at the same time. And then in some cases, it could present an opportunity to get the employee to change their mind. And that's particularly useful if it's an employee who is, highly experienced, highly valued, and, key to the business. Then actually, can the exit interview tool be a way to overturn their decision to leave? So what I want to just move on to now is around an example people plan, just to sort of bring all what I've discussed together and just show you an illustration. Before we do that, we've got our final poll of the webinar. So I would just like to invite Sue just to open up the poll for everybody. And we'll do that before we take questions, if we've got questions.
Okay, I'll just launch the poll now.
Thank you.
So everybody can start voting. So having explored this life cycle with us this morning, which areas do you think are going to be the main focus for your business during the year? Is it the structure, recruitment, employee development, or pay and reward? Nearly everybody's
Okay.
voted, I think. Yep, we'll close the poll and I'll share the results with you. So there you go.
Thank you. Oh, okay. So employee development, yeah, that's come up high. So.
And the structure.
Yeah, 24%. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, it could be because people are refocusing on working from home, getting rid of offices, and needing the new skill set piece. Because I know a lot of people, including ourselves, we're rethinking how we work because we had to remain virtual for, it will be 12 months, I think, by the time we get out of this lockdown, I think. So yeah.
Yeah.
People focus
and the recruitment and onboarding at 20%. So in a way, that's promising in that, we've got businesses that need or want to recruit, which is good, especially, what we've gone through this last year, and obviously with Brexit. So it's good that we're seeing businesses wanting to focus on recruitment. So what I'm going to do is just to finish off, go through an illustration for you of what we can, how we can use a people plan. So hopefully you can all see the table here. So this is the format that I used early on in the webinar. So always be sure to have the business objective at the top, because that's got to be what the content of this aligns to. Because remember, having you can't achieve your business objectives or success if you haven't got the right people in place in terms of the skills, etc. So it has to be aligned. And then it's about stipulating here a smart people objective that is aligned to the above business objective. And here are some examples. So we know we've got to respond to COVID. We know perhaps there's going to be some skill shortages because actually employee development has been put on the back burner for the last year. We know from research, and we're probably feeling and seeing it ourselves, but people's well-being, addressing the impact of employee well-being deteriorating because of that pandemic. And of course, Brexit, you can't get away from Brexit in terms of changes to our processes and therefore training that comes out of it, and recruitment, because we have to be sponsors and there's new working practices to do with recruitment. And succession planning to focus on internal growth is another idea that you could use there, because whilst we may need to recruit for some urgent roles, we still should be mindful about actually how can we grow from within, so you're preparing yourself for the future. So there's some things that could be your constraints, risks, opportunities. And then in terms of what we plan to do, then you may make a commercial decision to continue with furlough right through to April. Whether or not there's going to be any changes to it, we do not know, but nothing surprises us anymore. You may make a decision that you need to review your operating model and look at making some changes to it. From your skill shortages perspective, then and the development side came through quite highly on our polls, then look at your training, your succession planning, because you need to be equipped for the challenges that we move forward with. And the EAP, that falls in nicely with, if we're wanting to focus on looking after ourselves, looking after our employees, we're seeing an impact of, mental well-being, then look at your EAP. If you don't offer an EAP, then you may want to have a project to, research and go to market to see some providers, because it really can be a beneficial benefit. And look at how you review your internal comms. In terms of your Brexit challenge, your recruitment, then it might be that you've identified you have to be a sponsor because you rely heavily on recruiting from outside the UK, in particular if you operate in the hospitality sector. And then, as I said, in terms of succession planning, you might find that actually what you need to do now in the short term is get out all those recent performance reviews, go through them, do a systematic review, and try and think how you can look at training development needs. And you may want to revisit your monthly one-to-one process. If you don't do monthly one-to-ones, then bring them in because they're really, really worthwhile. So that's how an example of how you can start mapping out your activities and what you need to do to align to the relevant business objective. And just before I close, it's just a reminder then that this afternoon, if you do have that 1 hour to spare, then please do join us on our webinar this afternoon where we go through the SME challenges post-COVID and how we can work through those. And Sue, I just wondered if we've got any questions that may have come in during the webinar.
No, we've not had any questions. So
Okay.
I guess it's because this is the style of this particular webinar. It's not as technical as before. It's going to affect everybody differently. So yeah. I think that's the main reason. So so yeah, I'll just take back the presentation. Hopefully you're seeing the right screen. Yeah. So yeah, so thank you, Victoria, for a very informative
You're
session.
welcome.
Lots of information there for you all. Hopefully it's giving you something to consider. We will be sending out copies of the presentation to you, so useful as a kind of memory jogger. And if you think of any questions that we can help with, then please do let us know. Just email us. You'll have contact emails on the webinar invites. We'll also be sending a link out to a recording of the webinar. So just to let you know, our webinar program, we have posted it up now for the whole quarter. There's a big mix of information there for you, particularly linked with everything that we've talked about this morning. So as Victoria's already mentioned, this afternoon we have one on the challenges post-COVID. We are looking at mental health, both from a health and safety perspective and slightly later on from an HR perspective in actually managing it. We are also looking at our charity. We are focusing on our charity as well, which is Walking to the Gambia. And we are telling you all about the project that we are helping to raise funds for. So other things we are covering are employment law. We're anticipating there'll be a few changes coming through due to Brexit. So we're hoping there'll be enough information for us to tell you about the forthcoming changes for this year come February. We are looking at this development gap that we've identified as being a real issue this morning in the polls. It was an area that was identified, and Improve e-learning is a very cost-effective way of helping towards plugging that gap. It won't do everything, but it will help you considerably to manage that process. And then just as a reminder, we've got the IR35 changes, which the government said they were not going to postpone beyond April this year. They did it once, they're not going to do it again. So that's just to remind everybody of all the issues around that. And then we continue with safeguarding, I said the managing mental health absences, general fire safety, and then looking at GDPR and data. There's a few implications post-Brexit. We thought we'd give it time to settle down a little bit before we launched into that meaty topic. So we do have a number of tools, as we've mentioned, to help support you. So we do offer first aiders for mental health. It's a qualification as well. So if you complete the actual assignments as part of it, then you will get the certificate as well. We're running hopefully face-to-face ones in March. We've postponed them to March with the hope that the lockdown will be lifted by then. But we do them in-house as well, and can run some of our courses virtually if needed. So do contact us if you're interested. We do have a partner who offers an EAP scheme that is really cost effective for smaller organisations. So, and it's a very highly regarded benefit for relatively low cost. So if you are interested, let us know. And again, we've mentioned before the engagement multiplier who do the employee engagement surveys. Again, they've been extremely successful. We have a number of clients using them and finding them very helpful in helping with the employee motivation, addressing employee concerns in a positive and constructive way that works with the business as well. So again, let us know if you want more information. And we have a number of audits that are available to you free from our main website, both health and safety and risk and compliance. And we are adding to those all the while. And we do provide a range of services, both ad hoc and retained. So please do let us know if you're interested, as well as a health and safety and payroll service as well. Again, if you want to stay in the loop, we do issue regular newsletters to keep you posted about what's going on, so you can sign up for those on our website. Finally, just a reminder of the contacts if you ever have any questions about either our services or the content of the webinar or anything else we can help with. And please do send through your feedback. You should get a survey after the webinar, and we always welcome feedback to help us improve and offer the services that you are looking for. Just remains for me to say thank you to Victoria for today, for the webinar, and also thank you to you all for attending and for listening, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.